It's that time of year again, time for another Beatles re-release, this time the remixed and remastered Revolver that originally debuted in 1966. That's 56 years ago. That's 56 years of me living with and loving this music. And I have to say up front, the Beatles had a major role in me becoming an audiophile. My audiophile journey really starts with the Beatles. John, Paul, George, and Ringo, they created so many different kinds of sounds from 1962 to 1970. They did not stand still. And though I didn't know it at the time, my listening, my ear training with the Beatles, of hearing how the timbre of their voices changed, their mixes were so different and so adventurous, and creating sounds that had never happened before, like backwards guitars and all sorts of things that are in those albums, that I'm still now, all these years later, still loving and enjoying and listening deeper and deeper and deeper. But here's the thing. This new Revolver, the 2022 Revolver, isn't just merely remastered, it is remixed. Now, the original album was recorded to 4-track. That was their studio machine, was a 4-track analog machine. And that meant that they had to double up, instruments on more than one track, like the bass and drums were combined on one track. And therefore, up till now, locking their relationship of the sound of the bass and the drum together. But thanks to Peter Jackson, to his technical wizardry and what he could bring to the table in AI, he managed to be able to separate, or his technology managed to separate, for example, Paul's bass from Ringo's drums, and allow Giles Martin, George Martin's son, to create entirely new mixes and balances of their music. So much so that at first it was a bit disorienting for me. I kept going back to the 2009 remaster and thinking, yeah, this sounds more like what I'm used to. I'm more, comfortable with that. That's what this music sounds like to me. That's what Revolver sounds like to me. And I have LPs, I have many different versions. The Capitol version, which is a different mix from the UK mix. I've heard, a little this and a little that, but the basic sound of Revolver, I got that in my head. So Giles' 2022 mix, I couldn't quite grasp it at first. I said, yes, I hear that it's more transparent, it's clear, everything about it is objectively better. But it's not what it is. It's not the sound of that album. And if you go back to the idea of what the artist intended, what the Beatles, the 4 of them, intended in 1966 and approved and released, this is a different thing. And that's something I had to grapple with. Now, another way of looking at this, though, is that the Beatles were always looking to change their sound and evolve their sound from album to album, from song to song. They all created their own thing each time. And now, with Giles' remix, not remaster, remix, he's taking it even further. So he's taking it, let's say, in the spirit of the Beatles. That's the positive way of looking at it, and that's the way I'm going to use it. But to tell you the truth, I really had to work at this. I had to really sit and listen to this album, the 2022 Revolver, over and over and over again, and occasionally go back, listen to the earlier versions, and go back to the 2022. And my brain was sort of recalibrating my expectations of what this music could be. Now, I have in advance a promo copy of the box set of 5 CDs. And there's the new 2022 stereo mix, the original mono mix on another CD, 2 CDs of outtakes and rehearsals. They're called sessions. And a 5th CD, which is the single that came out at that time, because the Beatles' singles were not songs that were on their albums. And the single was Paperback Writer, and the flip side was Rain, which I actually prefer Rain to Paperback Writer. They're both great. but Ringo's drumming on Ray and John. Wow, it's like the Beatles are moving forward so fast. It was so exciting back then, and here we are, still really getting my juices flowing. So anyway, those are the 5 discs, but it's also available in an LP version and a high-res version, lots of different variants, and of course you could just buy the single Revolver. This comes out as official release is on October 28th. Oh, I want to point this out, something really interesting about the Beatles, that the Beatles were a very unusual band in ways beyond what I just said, in that they only recorded, or almost only recorded, in one studio, Abbey Road. And that George Martin was pretty much the only producer they ever used. And they had 2 engineers. The first engineer was Norman Smith. He recorded all of their albums up to Rubber Soul. And then his assistant engineer, Jeff Emmerich, his first sessions were Revolver. He was 20 years old when he recorded Revolver. And because he had a fresher take and he was closer to the ages of the Beatles, that's one of the reasons that that album sounds so different than what came before. He mic'd the drums in a different way than Norman had mic'd them. He was willing to try anything. He was up for experimentation. Any ideas that the Beatles had, he was on it. So that's fascinating to me. So while other bands, other huge bands, were recording in different studios with different engineers and different producers, the Beatles basically had that one studio, Abbey Road, one producer, and 2 sets of engineers. And by the way, Norman Smith, who left in 1966, he went on to produce this band you may have heard of called Pink Floyd. So he was like, yeah, I'm good with the Beatles, but I want to move on and do Pink Floyd. So that's pretty cool. And then Jeff Emmerich went on to, after the Beatles broke up, Jeff Emmerich recorded some of Paul McCartney's albums and Elvis Costello records. He had a long career after the Beatles and was involved in some of the remasters and remixes of the albums over the many decades. So no, I didn't get the LP as part of this promo package, but I ordered it on Amazon, and I'll get that shortly. But I would point out that the LP is 100% sourced from the new digital master, which is this heavily remixed, remastered version. So for all the people that were upset about the MoFi injecting some DSD in the remastering of MoFi's records, this is a wholesale change from, there's nothing analog about this new version. That's my point. So if you're an analog diehard audiophile, you might want to steer clear of this one and just listen to it in its, let's say, natural digital form. It is also available in high-res for you high-res purists. Before we go any further, yes, there will be an audiophiliac viewer system of the day later on in this episode. Now, I gotta say, the outtakes, the sessions, the rehearsals, those, I like them in all these, the reissue, remastered versions, the White Album especially, but Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper, I thoroughly enjoy hearing the Beatles at the moment of creation making these iconic songs. And this one is definitely up there. Matter of fact, Yellow Submarine, which was a John song. You hear John alone on solo guitar, and the very first take is nothing like Yellow Submarine. I mean, well, it hints at Yellow Submarine, but it's a very down, alienated, desperate song. So nothing like the sunny Ringo version, right? And you hear John, and then you hear another take with John and Paul, and it's sort of forming, and then you hear one with Ringo, and then you just hear it coming to life. Goosebump territory. And John's I'm Always Sleeping, another one that just, I heard he liked sleeping. John apparently really loved to sleep, and he kept being woken up by people. So, as a matter of fact, and one of the greatest things about the new box set on LP and on CD is it comes with this large format book. It's just loaded with great photography and a song-by-song breakdown of how those songs came together and how they were recorded. And if you're deep into the Beatles, you will absolutely devour this book. And by the way, it's just so beautiful. It's really gorgeous. the whole presentation is first rate. I did note, by the way, that when I compared the 2022 stereo remix to all my other versions on CD, that the new version is louder. And to me, louder implies, I'm not sure I can say this with certainty, that it is more compressed than the previous versions. Like I said, my go-to version for listening to Revolver up to this point is the 2009 remaster. That's the one that sounds right to me. You know, but if you're a lot younger than me and you've only heard the UK version and you don't have a long history of hearing Revolver sounding a certain way, this new, improved, more transparent, clearer, this may be head and shoulders over everything else you've ever heard from Revolver. I would say that's likely to happen. So it sort of depends on your personal relationship with the Beatles about how you will react to the new remix. Prepare for shooting the video. I listened to the 2022 Revolver and all the outtakes a lot, for hours and hours, for days actually. And it was, you know, I'm getting to it. I'm feeling it, I get it, and I'm moving closer to fully embracing the new version. But I'm still going to be listening to the 2009. And I'm really curious about the 2022 LP, about how that, let's say, decodes over my turntable. Now, I also want to point out that the new stereo mixes, the soundstage on the 2022 Revolver, sounds more contemporary. The 1966 stereo mix was kind of left-right. Instruments were bunched together because they, in fact, were on those 4-track masters. So now, with the Peter Jackson technology, the soundstage can be, well, bigger, more spacious. Vocals can be centered, where before they were on the left or right channels, that sort of thing. So it makes the Beatles' music sound more contemporary. Again, is that a good thing? I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going with the flow. Because if I want to hear the 1966 Beatles, I have plenty of options. But it's nice to see that Giles was pushing the envelope and offering these new types of mixes of these classic songs. As you may have picked up, I'm really pumped by this ongoing reissue, remix program that Giles Martin is heading. Now, what comes next is a fair question. It's probably Rubber Soul. That would make sense. That's the one before this one. That's likely to happen. Now, I would say, if Giles called me up and said, Steve, what should I do next? I would say, hey, what about doing Magical Mystery Tour? I love Magical Mystery Tour. I actually prefer it over Sgt. Pepper. It's the record that followed Sgt. Pepper. And it is a psychedelic record. People refer to Pepper as being psychedelic, the psychedelic Beatles. I guess it is, a day in the life of psychedelic. Within you and without you, psychedelic, but Magical Mystery Tour is really out there. And the mixes are so much denser, there's more going on. So I'm voting for Magical Mystery Tour. But I'll take what I get. You know, it'll probably be Rubber Soul, and I'll be thrilled to be talking about that with you guys a year from now, assuming that's the interval. Now, of course, I want to hear from you guys. Starting on October 28th, when this comes out, and presumably be able to stream it, I want to hear from you about how you feel about this new sound for Revolver. Yeah, so please leave comments about that. And now it's time for the Audiophiliac Viewer System of the Day. Hey, this one comes from Adam. He lives in Suffern, New York, and he put together this system during COVID. It's all analog. He has zero interest in digital. The speakers are Wilson Beness Resolution. They are finished in coral silver, and they sit atop Townsend seismic isolation platforms. The amplifier is a Luxman 95th anniversary 595 integrated. The turntable is a Bergman Magne linear tracker with a Soundsmith Hyperion Mark II cartridge. The turntable is sitting on Symposium Segway ISO Stealth platform and Roller Blocks Series 2. Phono preamp is a Zestos Andros Deluxe 2. Power conditioning is AudioQuest Niagara 5000, and all the cables, the speaker cables and RCA interconnects, are Grover Huffman Faro series. Thanks for sending that in, Adam. Okay, we are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and I am the audiophiliac, and I am absolutely 100% a Beatles fan. Big time. And the other thing I am is excited. Excited to have you guys out there and watching these videos. It never gets old. When I turn on the camera to do this, I am totally pumped because it's incredible to me that I can reach tens of thousands of you just talking to my iPhone and making these videos. So if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please consider joining my Patreon. The address is on the screen. Patreon accepts payment in dollars, pounds, and euros. Some people join for a couple months and some people stick around for years, and whatever works for you. Or you could just subscribe to this channel, and when you do, please remember to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time there's an incredible new episode. And if you like a given episode, please hit the like button. Oh, and I do have this new playlist. It's not Beatles related, really, but it's called All Mixed Up, and it's on Qobuz, and I will link to the playlist directly below. Someday I'll figure out how to put it on other platforms like Tidal or Spotify or something. But for now, it's only on Qobuz. So if you're a Qobuz subscriber, check it out. It's 4.5 hours long. Plenty of great music. This is all the music I've been listening to. This is a lot of the music I've been listening to for the last few months. And with that, I can say my work here is at last complete. Thank you again for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.